I had much desire to serve God in my life, because even when I was still in Catholic, I used to help in the priests when they are carrying on the services, and I worked so much in the Catholic parishes. So even in my childhood, they used to call me Reverend Father because they knew I liked to serve God so much. So now I entered in the church and I started being discipled by my pastor, and I started following the group which was going out to preach door-to-door evangelism, and I went out with them. I could watch them when they are preaching the gospel. I could watch them when they are answering the questions, and sometimes they could ask me also to speak out my testimony, and I could speak out my testimony. At the first beginning, I couldn't speak even for 5 minutes. But at the end, God started giving me courage to speak and speak. Then we started visiting the hospitals and pray for the sick. We started visiting the prison every Saturday to preach to the inmates. And I felt much desire to serve God. Then I joined the School of Ministry, where our pastor were training us about church leadership, about evangelism, about so many other things. And then I was so good with that. Then afterwards, I had a voice in me asking me to start a church in my home area. By that time, I was in Kampala town. Then I was very poor. I had left the village because I didn't have money by that time. And by that time, my wife was here in the village. Then for me, I had gone to look for the money, and we had even debits. We had debts which I had to pay. And then the Lord was speaking to me to go and preach the gospel and start a church in my home area. Then I started fighting with that thought for a long time. I remember one time going to my pastor and I told him, the Lord has called me to go and preach the gospel. And the pastor said, if the Lord is sending you to go back and preach, that is very good. He prayed for me and he released me to go. But he never gave me anything to sponsor me for that. But when I was coming out of that pastor's office, then I met a herald in the church who said, oh, my brother, I've been looking for you for a long time. I have a job for you. So he took me to his school, and I started teaching in his school. Then I taught in his school for 8 months, but the money never paid me. The only thing he did, he was giving me tips to keep me for food and for soap, but he never paid me salary. Then one day I felt bad because he was not paying me. I went back to my pastor to tell him, surely I feel I'm so burdened. The elder of the church took me in his school, but he's not paying me my salary. I thought the pastor could call the elder and counsel him and ask him to pay me. But the pastor replied me by saying, I feel the Holy Spirit is telling me that you are rebellious more than Jonah. Then I wondered why. He asked me, you had told me that the Lord is sending you to the village to preach the gospel. Why didn't you go? I had no answer to tell him. He said, now, you need to obey the voice of the Lord. The Lord wants you to go and preach the gospel. I felt so down because the pastor had never asked me why you didn't go until I went back to his office to report to the elder. So then, that's when I left and come to the village. I didn't have even money to bring me. What I did when I was in the pastor's office, I said, Lord, if you give me money which can take me home, I will go. And that's what the Lord did. When I went out, there was a certain lady. She gave me the money which brought me at the point where we branched from when we are coming to this place, at the main road at the tarmac. That's where I stopped and I had to walk all those miles. My home was behind this hill here. That's where my home is. Then when I came there, that's when I came and we started preaching the gospel and we started this church. This was our first church. And then from here, we went to Mbalala and started preaching.